Hey YouTube, it's Corlash1990, and today I have my Star Trek CCG deck collection. And I meant to post this on Friday, but I got held up with other things on Friday. I basically got all my Game of Thrones cards in the mail, and instead of doing an opening video on those, I kind of wanted to go through them at my own pace, just to kind of see what I was getting. And the 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 earlier versions that I gamed, the artwork was really good, and then half the stuff I bought was when they kind of revamped the art. It was still the CCG instead of the LCG, and a lot of those cards, in my opinion, just did not look good at all. They actually looked pretty terrible. The card layout, the artwork, everything, it wasn't what I was expecting. But I got them all for really cheap, so I decided to keep that off the channel for now. I might do some LCG stuff, like deck techs and whatnot, but I scrapped the whole idea that I had, and then got held up with things during the weekend. So today I am posting the video that was meant to go out Friday, and that is for, again, my Star Trek CCG deck collection. And I have them in two different sections. There's the Next Generation decks and then the Voyager decks. And what I mean by that, all cards in these decks are only cards that have the Next Generation logo up on the top. It's I guess it's called like series format or something. And then with these, everything has Voyager. In fact, I have a deck tech video for this deck already on the channel. I'll eventually update it with deck lists, and I have some other deck lists to update. A video of mine too for my Jihad deck collection. A viewer was kind enough to basically just type out the deck lists for all 7 decks that I posted. So kudos to you again, dude. I'll make sure to update that video. But I'll go through the Next Generation decks first. And the reason why I did it that way, one, it's more thematic. And two, there is a pretty extensive banned list for this game. And I think every one of these decks would be illegal for that reason if I was playing an open format, mixing cards around and whatnot. So I kept it just more thematic because, again, that's kind of like how I like to play these games, right? So I'll go over my favorite one first, and it's the draw deck and the Q10 deck. And then, yes, I do have a Q Flash deck as well for these. Though Q Flash is more often than not just pretty terrible. Probably best to not run it. But again, thematic and it's cool. And then this is the Seed deck. For those of you who don't know, basically you take turns laying out your planets one by one, and then you put out any of your doorways, any other cards that seed, basically before the game stuff. And then you put the cards that your opponent is going to encounter, like a classic board cube. You put them under your opponent's missions to make it more difficult for them to succeed in scoring the points. And whoever gets to 100 or more points first wins the game, so on and so forth. And so this deck is all about treachery. A lot of the missions require treachery. A bunch of the cards in here have treachery. And I'm not really going to go over the dilemmas. This game is kind of cool. Think of this like a sideboard almost. Like you'd want to cater your like C deck to the people you're playing against in your local meta or whatever. There are some that are just blatantly good and obvious, and there's no reason not to run them. Like Armis, for instance, one of the best early dilemmas that the game had. But this deck, you basically put Q flashes as some dilemmas. And then if your opponent encounters them, they will encounter X amount of these cards equal to the amount of people that are in that crew encountering them. And then this right here is like it's like a chunkier deck that's not in your deck. And you can play Q10 to then get a Q10 card and get it back in your hand, basically. And you can either do it at random, so you'd shuffle this up and reveal the top one and get that. Or you can do it fixed and you skip like your draw step and all this stuff and you discard the card instead of recycling the Q10 over and over again. And in here, I kind of have like a little sub-theme and then some just good generic cards in here as well. And then cards that work with other cards in this deck. Ignore the dilemmas. The dilemmas don't go here. They're placeholders for something else that I currently don't have. And then as far as the deck goes, you can tell, green sleeves. It's obviously Romulan, and I really like the Romulans. I think they're a great villain in the Star Trek universe. And yeah, it's just all the famous guys, you know, and ladies too. And it's all the main name characters, even some of the more generic evil-ish characters that all have treachery. You know, gotta have some Ferengi in here too. Some multiple Ferengi. And it's just after that, after the characters and the ships, it's kind of like the core of the deck. I have just a ton of card draw, card recycling. This is like a banned card, more card draw, more removal, and just more recycling effects and some control effects as well. And then the last part of the deck, there's a couple of this like flavor cards, and then here's the Q10s that you can use to cycle through your Q10 stuff. And my other deck that I have for next generation is my Federation. And again, it's built very similarly. It has a Q10 deck, it has a Q Flash, all the dilemmas and the planets and whatnot. I won't go over these too much because again, it's pretty straightforward. And this deck is built all about diplomacy. And I went pretty heavy with the diplomacy theme too. A lot of these characters, I mean, you got to have the whole bridge crew. I'm trying to get the pictures without the glare showing. And then this other characters, I have a lot of diplomacy. You want as much of it as you can. And youth is a pretty common one in here too. So I play a bunch of the Soong type androids as well. And then you got to have Spot. Wherever data is, Spot's got to follow. And then more or less, this deck plays the same shell of good cards. These decks follow that same formula as well, because these cards can be played in every deck, and there's no reason why you wouldn't play them. Bringing things back from the graveyard is really good. Card draw is insanely good in this game, and especially if you can play cards for free on top of that as well, like Red Alert. And then having some control effects in here to stop your opponent or stall your opponent. And then this is like a little special side card that this deck has as well. And now for my Voyager decks, we'll go over my Hirogen deck very briefly, but I do have a deck tech video on my channel for this exact deck without the seed deck. But basically, you know, once you get into the later sets of Star Trek, there's a lot more seed cards that give you a lot more avenues of play. And overall, just kind of speed the game up, because this game can take quite a long time if you don't have extra ways of drawing cards or extra ways of playing cards. You only play one card a turn, and you only draw one card at the end of your turn. So if you can do double or triple that a turn, the game actually gets quite fast, and it's a lot more enjoyable, in my opinion. And the later sets have a very easy way of doing that. But if you don't know who the Hirogen are and Voyager, they're probably my favorite race in all of Star Trek, closely followed by the Vidian. And think of like a Predator from, you know, the movies like Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff. They are a tribe of people that go around, well, these like crazy huge alien dudes who are awesome looking, even kind of somewhat look like the Predator-ish. But yeah, they fly around and they hunt prey, and that's all they do. Their race, everything is bent on the thrill of the hunt and collecting their trophies. And so this deck, it does just that with all the alphas, or in some cases a belligerent beta Hirogen. But you make one of your opponent's character or prey, and you go and you capture them, and then you score points when you capture them or when you kill them, so on and so forth. And they have all their weapons, all their Hirogen weapons that are cool, that make their strength almost to the point where no one can even compete with them. And this is kind of the toolbox that they have for making their strategy go off. And then just like in my Hirogen deck, they play the same shell of just card draw. A lot of free card draw. This one's insanely good, by the way, Handshake. So is Mutation. This card's really hard to find, too. This card's like $3 or $4 just on its own now, which is kind of crazy to think of, as it's just like an uncommon. Out of a whole booster box, you generally get like one, maybe two of those. You maybe get 2 or 3 of these, and this is just a common. They're both kind of same thing, but different sort of thing. Draw 2, discard 1, or discard 1, then draw 2. Yeah, that's my Hirogen deck. This is probably my favorite deck to play. This deck is a load of fun. You don't really care about the missions a whole lot, though. You do have to score one planet, one space mission to win the game on top of your 100. But after that, you're just hunting your opponent's characters down, killing their crew, capturing their people, and it's quite a blast. And then this deck is my Vidian deck. And if you don't know what the Vidian are, I love their like backstory and their lore in Voyager. Basically, they're all disease ridden and they're born with this disease called the phage. And in order to maintain life, they fly around and they sneak on ships and they steal organs from people to put into themselves to prolong their life. And over time, those organs that they steal and then put in themselves become infected with the phage, and they have to keep doing that over and over and over again just to stay alive. So you could argue that they're not really villains. I mean, same with Hirogen. They're only doing what they know. It's the only thing that they know. But this is pretty creepy and like almost borderline demonic. There's an episode in there where this dude's friend gets kidnapped by the Vidian. Like they kidnap him and his friend, and the Vidian takes the face of his friend and wears it to try and like befriend him, which is kind of crazy. But as you can tell, in this deck, you're going to sneak, and again, it's the same thing, all these cool dilemmas. Again, I'm not going to go over these because it's not really necessary. But in this deck, you're going to get your Vidian Cruiser, you're going to put a Vidian Claw. Actually, this is a very key card. I'll explain what this face down card is in a second too. But you fly your Vidian Cruiser to your opponent's ship, you put a Vidian Claw on it, you transport a dude over, you use your Vidian with the Vidian Harvester, and you kill one of their characters or steal their organs, and then score points, and then go back up to your ship. And if they ever leave while a claw is connected to them, it damages both your ships, and then you can just shoot and blow up your ship if that's the case. Because this thing has 10 weapons, which is no laughing joke in this game, and it tends a decent amount. And these face down cards are a card that I currently don't own 3 of. It's not Dareth. It's Sulon, who is like one of the main villain guys for the V, and he's like actually like kind of evil from what I remember. Yeah, he one of the character B'Elanna, yeah, Torres. That's it. Almost said Trace. Yeah, B'Elanna Torres. She's like the half Klingon, half human. He ends up separating her into 2 people. One half is Klingon and one half is human, and the whole episode's really interesting. But the 2 face down cards like this are him, because I'm currently waiting on these in the mail. And then you got to have the Think Tank, because they end up curing the phage, so they're a little side package in this deck as well. But I like this deck and this one a lot because it doesn't just focus straight on the missions. This game is a lot of fun, but it can be playing like solitaire at times if you're doing just strictly missions. If you don't have a deck that interacts with your opponent, you're not going to interact with your opponent at all. And it's basically just the rush of who, gets to 100 first with no interaction outside of dealing with dilemmas. So these 2 decks are a little more hands-on. They're a little more technical. There's more rules to the game for these decks. And it's just like Star Wars CCG. There can be a lot of rules for this game, especially when you have all these little different side decks included in the game. Because there's more of them too. There's like a bridge crew deck where you're like shooting, and it makes combat a little more in-depth. And it just, your deck could be 300 cards thick, which is kind of overwhelming at times. But I play like the bare minimum, more or less, a little bit over the minimum, just to kind of keep a good amount of cards to support the theme within each of them. But yeah, I love this game. My girlfriend and I play it quite often. She's a huge Trekkie nerd, so this is the card game that got her into card gaming, basically. And yeah, we play it as often as we get a chance to, and it's a ton of fun. And it's for the older sets, it's really cheap, so I'd recommend looking for just bulk lots on eBay and just giving it a try. If once you like it, some of these other themes like Hirogen are not that expensive to build. Build a Hirogen deck, or the Vidians are pretty cheap too. It's just the really popular races or bridge crew people is where this game gets a little expensive. But yeah, anyway, that is my Star Trek CCG deck collection. I have more decks in the making. I want to make a Ferengi deck and maybe like an original series deck, maybe for like Klingons or something. I don't know. I'll figure that out when I get to it though. But definitely I want to make a Ferengi deck because the Ferengi are awesome and they're hilarious, and there's literally nothing bad about that any episode with the Ferengi in it. But yeah, this is my deck collection. I enjoy this game quite a bit, and I think other people would too. And hopefully this kind of gives you a little insight on what decks may or may not look like. And again, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.